I'll bang out another story this morning. This one happened when I was already old enough to be aware, at 15 years old. I had gone to the village to visit, and my grandma sent me to the store in the neighboring village. I needed to buy something for the tomatoes, copper sulfate or something like that. But here's the thing. You could get to that village by bus, and I was given money for the ride. Or you could walk there through the fields and a small patch of forest along a dirt road. At the time, I was saving every bit of money I could to blow at the computer clubs back in my dump of a hometown. This was in 1997, so I decided to walk. At first, the walk was fine, but like an idiot, I forgot to bring any water. And it was summer, midday, with the temperature over 30 degrees. Then I remembered, about 5 years earlier, I biked down that same road with some local guys. We got thirsty too, and one of them showed us a little spring in the forest. Naturally, I figured I could find it again. It had only been 5 years, and it wasn't supposed to be far from the road, so I turned off into the woods. I wandered around, thinking I must be a complete idiot. There was no way I'd find it. Eventually, I came out into a clearing. From my vague memories, I thought the spring should be somewhere around there, but the clearing turned out to be more like a mini graveyard. There were at least 5 graves, maybe more. The mounds had mostly flattened out, and only 2 headstones were still standing. Maybe there were only ever 2. The graves were old. I could only make out part of the inscription on one of the stones. Someone named Marfa had been buried there in 1918, and here's where things got weird. The whole place had a strange atmosphere. No birds were singing, no insects, no rustling animals, nothing. On top of that, it felt hard to breathe there, like there was pressure around the temples. But if you walked just 3 meters away from the spot, I checked, everything felt normal again. If you stood in the middle for a minute, the discomfort would come back just like before. I figured I'd better get the hell out of that forest. Screw the spring. I wasn't gonna die of thirst, and as I was leaving, something made me turn around. I looked back and saw several figures in the woods behind the graves. Human silhouettes. They were just standing there swaying side to side. At first, I thought I was seeing things, but no. They were real. You could see the bushes and trees right through them. They were half transparent. I bolted straight back to the road. I didn't ask my grandma about that place, but I did decide to ask a local guy what that graveyard was. Turns out it's not even a real cemetery, just a few graves. There used to be an estate in the village, and a nobleman lived there with his family. The Reds killed him and his whole family. Rumor has it they weren't even shot. Some were cut down with sabers, others stabbed, and some beaten to death with rifle butts. Before that, they were all forced to dig their own graves. They were buried there in the forest. The locals did the actual burying. Out of the whole family, people respected the mother, Marfa, and little Jaeger. That's why they got headstones sometime in the 1920s. This happened in 2007, as far as I remember. Back then, I was, as usual, sent off to the village for the holidays. I was left alone there overnight. The adults had gone to the city on some errands. They left me to watch over the house and the livestock. There were about 3.5 people living in the village back then, and now there's only 1 native resident left. But that's not the point. The house and the land were creepy as hell. A massive, sinister old stump about 2 meters tall, a half-ruined church nearby next to an overgrown pond, and a ring of trees in a clearing that gets mowed, with a rookery of crows in the middle. All of it stood on what was called the Volat Hill. Supposedly a giant, a volat, was buried there. The house was old and big, made of dark, aged timber. My grandmother used to say it was built back in the days of the Tsars. Wormwood was hung up everywhere to keep evil spirits out. So I fed the rabbits, pigs, and goats with compound feed, gave grain to the chickens, locked the coop, the yard, and 3 heavy interior doors with bolts. I was all set for a night-long marathon of Sega games and horror movies on DVD. Around midnight, it started. Something was howling, even though no one had dogs there, and wolves hadn't been seen in our area for about 40 years. Then came the sound of heavy footsteps on the roof. What could stomp around on the roof that loudly? My dad used to walk on it when he was fixing it for my grandmother, but he made way less noise than whatever that was that night. There were also some creepy silhouettes in the darkness. It looked like someone was walking down the path past our house. But first of all, what would anyone be doing out here in the middle of nowhere at night? And second, there was something off about him. Hard to describe, but the way he moved gave off a sense of unease and fear, like he wasn't human. After that, I turned on every light I could and stopped looking out the windows altogether. But the strange cacophony, howling, cowing, chirping insects, footsteps, and other sounds I couldn't even describe, kept going. I sat there on edge, playing Sonic with the volume turned up, trying to drown out the noise. By dawn, things started to quiet down. When the sun rose, it all gave way to the crowing of roosters and silence. About half an hour later, I forced myself to go out into the yard, checked on the animals, opened the chicken coop, and put some clover in the rabbit feeder. All the animals were fine, ours and the neighbors. None of the seasonal homes had been broken into either. Before that night, and even after, Nothing that extreme ever happened again when I was alone in the village. What the hell was that? Is there even a rational explanation for all this shit? Hey everyone, just wanted to share a story from my life. This happened about 5 years ago at an old private house. We sold it a long time ago because of some problems with my uncle, and now I live in a different house in the same village. But that's not really important. I was 12 at the time, so there's no way I could have imagined this. It was summer at night, and I really had to take a dump. But I was seriously scared, still am, of going to the outhouse after dark. Anyone who's lived in a village might understand how creepy it is, especially since I'd had some other scary stuff happen before that already made me afraid of going outside at night. So, to get to the point, it was around midnight. My mom and grandma were still awake, talking about something. I kept going to another room, trying to hold it in, but it wasn't working. So, I gathered all my courage, grabbed a flashlight, and with a heavy gut made my way to the toilet. Just so you know, it was a typical Soviet-style house with a big yard, about 18 sotkas, around 1,800 square meters. At night it looked super creepy, and I was really on edge. I ran to my throne and finally relaxed. I was shining the flashlight around and kind of laughing to myself. I had already grabbed the toilet paper and was about to finish when I suddenly thought, why not see how the paper falls down? So I pointed the flashlight down the hole. At first everything seemed fine, but then I saw some kind of light. I looked closer and realized that something in the pit was looking back at me. Eyes, staring right at me. Saying I freaked out is an understatement. I flew out of that outhouse with my pants and underwear still down, running full speed, and even fell and scraped my knees. I burst into the house, and everyone looked at me like I was an idiot. I was in hysterics, telling them exactly what happened. They told me I was just a coward and imagined it. But I kept insisting that there was something or someone down there. My grandpa said there was nothing there and went to check it out. I followed him with the flashlight and started shining it into the hole again. We looked, and he said he didn't see anything. But I told him there was something down there that looked kind of like a dog. Only it didn't move, didn't react at all. It was just standing there in the crap like it was solid ground. But I kept insisting that there was something or someone down there. My grandpa said there was nothing there and went to check it out. I followed him with the flashlight and started shining it into the hole again. We looked, and he said he didn't see anything. But I told him there was something down there that looked kind of like a dog. Only it didn't move, didn't react at all. It was just standing there in the crap like it was solid ground. The weirdest part is that my mom said she also heard something strange out there, but didn't see anyone. A few weeks later, maybe 3 or 4, a strong smell of decay started coming from the outhouse. My mom kept saying it was just because our grandpa had killed his dog. He had a dachshund Hun that one day suddenly went nuts and killed all the chickens. Grandpa got drunk, cried, and killed the dog. He said he buried it at the edge of the garden. She figured he hadn't finished the job and just threw the dog into the outhouse pit. But he swore he never threw anything down there. And how could the dog still be alive anyway? He said he'd basically chopped it with a shovel. It's creepy to even remember. Whatever that creature was, it reminded me more of a chupacabra or a coyote. It definitely wasn't a dog. The legs were way too long, and it looked totally different. Some people thought maybe it was just a dog somehow, but here's what I don't get. How did a dog open the door to the outhouse? It shuts really tight. I went back to check the next morning, and it was gone. But my mom said the noises were happening that same night. So yeah, that's my story. I've got more, but I don't know if I should bother sharing them. First time writing something like this, sorry for the mistakes, etc. I was on vacation. One night I got sick and tired of sitting at the computer. Decided to go outside, sit on the bench by the building entrance, and drink a couple of beers. Took a couple bottles and sat there sipping. It was around 2 a.m. Then I heard a woman's voice. It was quiet, but for some reason very clear. It said,
"Come here, please."
I looked around, seemed like no one was there. Then again,
"Come here, please."
I got up from the bench and started looking around. I saw a silhouette near the house across the yard, behind a tree. Looked like a girl or woman, hard to tell. There was no one else outside but me and her. I figured maybe she was calling me. There were still a few lit windows in the buildings, but I doubted anyone would be calling from there. At first, I thought about walking up to her. Actually, even took a couple steps in her direction. But then one thought popped into my head. She was standing near the corner of the building, next to a tree. And I started thinking, what if there are some thugs hiding around the corner and she's the bait? I come up to her, and they jump me. They can't come to me themselves because I'd see them and run home. So I even kind of shouted to her, "What do you want? Come here yourself." But she just stood there without moving. I turned around and started walking back to the bench, And as I was walking away, I heard something like, well, I don't remember word for word, like, well, you asked for it. I turned around, and now she was near another building. The courtyard is like a box of 4 buildings, standing behind some bushes. That would have been nothing special, except less than a minute had passed. And to get to those bushes from that tree in that amount of time, she would have had to run, and pretty fast, too. It's not like I was scared, but it definitely felt off. Like obviously some creepy shit was going on. I grabbed my beer from the bench, went up to the building entrance, and told her. Something like this, I think. Ma'am, you're out of your damn mind. I don't have time for this, so good night. And I went home. I live on the 3rd floor, by the way. Naturally, once I was inside, I looked out the window to see where that woman was. I looked, and she was standing there. Not right under my window, but maybe 6 meters away, looking straight at it. Right at me, actually. She stood where the light didn't really hit her. She looked like an ordinary young woman, maybe 25 to 30 years old, wearing either a dress or skirt, something light on top, maybe a sweater or jacket, boots on her feet, a small purse on one shoulder. I couldn't see her face. She had long hair hanging down over it. I figured she was just nuts and closed the curtains. Sat back down at the computer. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the window frame. That's when I really freaked out. For some reason, I suddenly thought that if I opened the curtain, she'd be right there behind the glass, like in a horror movie, with some twisted, freaked out face. No idea why I did what I did next. Guess I'm just messed up too. I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, came back, pulled the curtain aside, but there was no one there. But the woman was still in the same spot. She hadn't gone anywhere. I thought, okay, I'm imagining things. Time to go to bed. And that woman, whatever. Let her stand there if she wants to. I lay down, and then there was another knock on the window frame. I didn't get up this time, but it was still creepy. And before I finally fell asleep, I think I heard that knocking 3 more times. That's the story. No idea what the hell that was. Hey Anons, decided to write about some creepy shit that happened to me and a couple friends at an abandoned building. This happened this summer. After passing our exams, we decided to celebrate properly. Bought some booze, snacks, walked around until about 11 p.m. And then suddenly we really wanted to spend the night at the abandoned place. No clue why we got that idea, but under the magical influence of vodka, we couldn't care less about any creepy shit or whatever. Grabbed our stuff, stealthily slipped past 2 patrols, and somehow made it to the abandoned building. The city's not small, and it was way the hell out, practically on the other side of town. Quick rundown of what the place is. A typical unfinished construction project, kind of like an HZB-type building, but about 3 times smaller. 5 floors, all concrete, lots of rooms on each floor. No windows, just holes in the walls. The inner hallways where light doesn't reach are seriously spooky. So we got there and started thinking about how to get in. Climbed over the fence, and while sneaking through the bushes, me and one of the guys saw a weird-ass silhouette. It ducked behind the corner of the building about 5 seconds after we noticed it. The other 2 friends said we were full of shit, imagining things. We decided to climb up to the roof, turned on our phone flashlights, and started heading up the stairwell. The first weird thing that killed the mood a bit was this strange smell that started between the 2nd and 3rd floors. The worst of it was between the 4th and 5th. It was just unbearable. The smell was disgusting, sickly sweet and sour. I don't know what a rotting corpse smells like, but for some reason, I think it was that. And right there, my shoelaces came undone. I was at the back of the group, and the damn laces made me stop. I ended up right across from the doorway leading from the stairwell into this long hallway. As soon as I finished tying them and looked up, it seemed like there was something moving at the end of the hallway. I nearly shit myself and wanted to turn back. But let's call one of the 3 friends that, called out to me, and I ran to catch up. We made it to the roof. Nothing weird happened on the way up. The view was actually pretty nice, and it was super quiet, just the wind blowing every now and then. We decided to wait for sunrise there, and then some weird instinct made me walk over to the edge of the roof and look down. Saying I freaked out would be an understatement. There were 3 figures near the entrance. They were standing there, kind of swaying side to side. Because it was dark, they looked completely black, wearing these insanely huge cloaks so you couldn't see their faces at all. I immediately called out to the guys, "We're fucked," and they freaked out too. One of them even pulled out a knife. We started thinking how the hell we'd get down. It was starting to get light already, so we decided to book it down the same stairwell. We started descending, got past that reeking as hell floor, and then we heard a very, very loud scream, like someone was being cut open. It was insanely loud. I remember I actually fell on the stairs. Nearly passed out from the shock. We've never run so fast in our lives. When we reached the 1st floor, just as we were getting out of the stairwell, we heard footsteps behind us, like those things had decided to chase after us. The booze buzz was completely gone. We were all scared out of our minds. I remember we ran for at least a kilometer without stopping, which turned out to be a good thing, because a police car drove by nearby. No idea how they didn't spot us, so yeah, that's the shit that happened. After that, we all went our separate ways, and I'm never going back to an abandoned building again. Might as well write my crap here. No point in making a separate thread since my story isn't scary, more like some schizo problems. But I'd be curious to hear an esoteric interpretation of all this, point by point. So anyway, I live in a city. Won't say which one, but it's a relatively large place. Not the capital, obviously, but not a complete backwater either. Population's about 500,000, just to give some context. Near my place there's a typical post-Soviet food market, rows of old ladies selling their cucumbers, kiosks with meat, cleaning products, and other random crap. Pretty much where all the locals go to shop. And I started noticing some weird shit, like someone always grabs the insert product name I'm about to buy right before I do. Say I decide to get a bag of buckwheat from the Ryazan buckwheat factory. Just an example. I get in line at the kiosk, and without fail, the person right in front of me asks for that exact same bag of buckwheat, and often it's the last one. So I'm literally standing there, ready to buy it, and they swoop in and I get nothing. You brush it off as coincidence, keep going. Then I think, maybe I'll grab a bottle of raspberry syrup to go with pancakes. And again, some asshole jumps ahead of me at the window and asks for that damn last bottle of syrup. I can understand buckwheat or bread, staple stuff. But with things like suck syrup, it's getting weird. Especially when there's also apricot, maple, even honey available. But no, they go for the raspberry one. It feels like telepaths are stealing my probabilities, lol. Like there's no other way to explain it. They're just stripping me of choice, snatching away one of my available actions. My mom has her own weird thing. She keeps running into acquaintances who swear they saw her somewhere in the city on a certain day, in a part of town where she absolutely wasn't and couldn't have been. They'll say, "You walked right past me and didn't even say hi." Coincidence? Maybe. Could be people who look like her, I guess. But it gets creepy when you consider that some of them supposedly saw her up close, not just from behind, and had a chance to really look at her and still say it was her. And dogs really love her. All of them. On the street they run up to her, stare at her intensely, hide behind her legs, and don't want to leave. Their owners are always baffled and swear their pets never act that way. No one can explain why they behave like that only around her. We've never had dogs at home, only cats. And finally, today's incident. I decided to go for a walk in the rain. I'm walking along a highway, and ahead of me is some woman in a brown coat and leggings. I pass her and keep going. Walked for about 30 minutes, then turned back toward home. And as I'm getting close to my building, I see the same woman walking toward me. And I'd seen her half an hour ago in a completely different part of the city, pretty far from where I live. Some messed up coincidences. I guess you could explain everything rationally well, except the dogs. But my inner paranoid still puts on the tinfoil hat